What is good, ninjas? Design Syndrome here, glad to have you back on the channel. Back in the day, my father used to do some little graphic design work here and there. He wasn't a graphic designer, but he used to do some personal cards and stuff like that. So we used to have a lot of the box sets, the physical box sets, for the software programs that he used, like CorelDRAW and Photoshop and the old Microsoft vintage boxes. Now everything is mostly digital and subscription-based, but back in the day you had to go to the store and grab the specific box of the piece of software that you wanted. And man, like the graphic design for software packaging and even the old clipart pack compilations used to be so cool. And actually remembering that got me thinking, how would it look if my digital product, like textures, graphics, the mockups, all of that, came into a physical product compilation that was released 30 years ago? Like to actually have it here physically, that you could grab it. And then I said to myself, I'm a graphic designer, I have free will, why don't I just make it? And I did, I actually have it right here. Let me show you how I made it. Back in the 90s, when computer software was just hitting the mainstream, nobody really knew what these pieces of software were really capable of. So the branding and packaging allowed itself to be a little bit more out there and experimental in terms of the images that they used to convey their products. The boxes actually had this sort of surreal, dreamlike tone to them. They weren't not just trying to sell you the product, they tried to sell you the idea that these were tools to bring your ideas to life. I remember like the CorelDRAW boxes like exploding with explosions in cliparts and like a million. And also the classic like the Photoshops like vintage with the eye and the magnifying glass with this different composition that was really oniric and sort of like a dreamscape. They had to sell the feeling of a new frontier of things that could be achieved with these pieces of software because people didn't really understand what the features meant. It was maybe a bit too niche, so having this really evocative and inspiring packaging made it more appealing to a broader like swath of possible clientele. Nowadays, things are a bit more different, given the speed at which we consume. Our entire exposure to one of these applications gets reduced to a little square logo or even a color. It's kind of a bummer. This corporate minimalism is intentional. You can see it happening with a bunch of brands that get their identity sort of watered down. They become a vessel, so we, the consumer, project the meaning onto them. The clearest example of this is look at the OpenAI logo. Super powerful tool, it's meant to be for everything. So the logo looks like nothing. And you could say the same of the Google Flat App Design Suite or the Adobe logo system. Because we sort of already know that computers can do everything, right? So these applications get reduced to the category of their work they aim to help us with. For the sake of ease of access and scalability, they chose to sacrifice some of the aspiring and narrative elements these old packagings used to project. Like I remember being in a room and seeing the old Photoshop box, thinking it's some obscure piece of software like,
oh, what's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Now it's just like, boop, boop, click open. And I just realized this while recording this, like the hero image you get when you open Photoshop or any of these pieces of software is like the evolution of or what we're left with from that era of the box set, you know? It's not the same as having the physical thing, but it is what it is. My first job out of high school, I already know that I was going to study graphic design, was at a print shop, and I got to learn a lot there. And one of the hardest requests that we got is when we had to develop and design some kind of packaging from scratch. Because there is a lot of trial and error that goes into it when developing the cutting die.
The die cutting process begins with highly sophisticated, computer-controlled laser equipment. Next, the cutting rules are inserted by hand into the die boards.
You have to take into account the paper thickness sometimes, so the lids close properly, stuff like that. These are projects that are kind of hard to visualize if you don't know 3D or are aware of all the ins and outs of packaging design. So I guess now is the perfect time to introduce you to this project sponsor, Pacdora. It's a super helpful and powerful full suite web application that simplifies a lot of the technicalities that goes into packaging design. So it's basically everything you need regarding packaging development and presentation. And we are going to be using it to bring this idea to life. If you want to try Pacdora yourself, use code MAURO20 to get 20% off your Pacdora subscription. I'll leave you all the links down below. So moving on. Once inside Pacdora, we're going to create our custom die for our packaging using the die line template maker over here. And you can see there is a bunch of ready-to-go templates. I'm going to use the Tuckend software box die line. And here you can set the measures to whatever you like. They even have a custom paper thickness, which is really cool and really helpful because it also updates all your other measurements live, right? So it's having into account the thickness of the paper, so when it falls nicely. We even have here a small 3D preview to visualize the folding of our model. A tip that I can give you when you're trying to decide on the final measurements for your design, especially if you're actually going to be producing this in quantity, be it for yourself or for a client, it's find out the dimensions of the prime sheet that is going to be printed on when it goes into full production, and design with that in mind. That way you can be as optimal as possible with the placement of the repetitions of your design. Squeezing even one more design per sheet in a production of thousands can save you or your client a lot of money. Another pro tip that I can give you is to consider also the directions of the fiber within the paper, aka the grain direction. Paper is stiffer along the grain and more flexible across it. If folds go against the grain, then it's more likely to crack or warp. A simple rule of thumb is to make the longer folds on your design run with the grain. You want a quick way to know the grain direction? Grab whatever piece of paper you have and grab it by the side and let it flap. Then go to the next side and do the same. And you can see there is one side that's stiffer than the other, right? This is longer, so more weight, it should flap harder, but it's kind of stiffer than this side, you know? So this is the direction of the grain. It runs this way, right? So once I'm happy with what I got, you can choose to export it, in our case Illustrator. And as you can see, the die line already comes with all the creases, trim and bleed lines ready to go. I'm going to get rid of the invisible bounding box, these elements, lock this layer and work on the ones below so the template is visible at all times. So yeah, all that's left for us is to get into the design. Asset packs actually go a long way back. So for this project's main image, I drew inspiration from the old kind of disconnected style of the vintage clipart packs. And you know, actually looking at it now, it's so raw and bad that I think it goes full circle and it ends up being actually hard, not gonna lie. You know, I always say in the Design Dojo, which is the Discord community in which I teach design for free, you can join link below. Good design, it's about making decisions. And in these designs, you know, there were decisions being made for sure. So I created this image overlaying some of my own graphics and elements in a way that creates a nice dynamic composition, but that is no super integrated, you know, that you can easily tell apart each element. And decided to contrast that aesthetic in the typographic department, doing something more reminiscent of the really elegant Adobe and Microsoft packaging styles. The main font that I used for all my display text is the vintage gold apple garamond. It's really timeless and has that elegant feel that contrasts really well with the nature of the hero image of the pack. And for the supporting text, I'm using Myriad in its normal and condensed variations. And I chose this font because it's beautiful negative space, which makes it work really well in tiny formats, which in turn allows you to put a lot of information in a small space, which is perfect for packaging design. Then I added the supporting graphic elements, some of the Design Syndrome logos, the iconic PC, CD-ROM and Windows compatibility badges to add some really nice hierarchy levels and really drive home that vintage feel. And of course you can't miss like the tacky golden ribbon, like highlighting some feature of the product, like 2000 graphics, explosions. So yeah, it looks like we are done. Back in Illustrator, let's do a quick export without the die lines and bring it back to Pacdora. Clicking here from our die template screen will take us to the 3D mockup generator. And super quick, we can drag our design here to see it fit on the model. This looks great already, And from here you can even make some AI generated backgrounds for your product or render some of the really nice pre-made animations they have ready, which I think it's a really nice touch to be able to show your work in a more lively and dynamic way to your clients. And if you want even more control, you can hop into the Pacdora's full 3D editor to create some more custom compositions. And this looks fire and all, but I'm getting a bit tired of the digital world. I also created this CD print and CD case front and back cover to go along with the box set experience, so let's make this real. So here it is, the full project. I really loved how it turned out. I highly encourage you guys to try something like this out. Bring some of your work into the real world. It can be a poster or some fun packaging experiment such as this one, because the digital space, with all its practicalities and efficiencies that we all know and love, leaves a huge part of our work's narrative actually hidden from us. Type and images don't look the same when in our hands, or when we need to move our head or adjust our bodies in some way so we can fully grasp a piece. Or when you can hand it to somebody and say, yo, what do you think about this? And the exchange that starts there, it's hard to replicate through a screen. Moments like this I feel when a designer or any kind of creative really creates a full sensory experience. It's when we go full circle and we can finally say, I created something today. So that was everything for this video, ninjas. Hope you liked it and hopefully learned something. You already know how it is. See you in the next one, ninjas. Fuck peace, wish you conflict.